Chapter 6 The Tiger Swami. I have discovered the Tiger Swami's address. Let us visit him tomorrow. This welcome suggestion came from Chandi, one of my high school friends. I was eager to meet the saint who in his pre-monastic life had caught and fought tigers with his naked hands. A boyish enthusiasm over such remarkable feats was strong within me. The next day dawned wintry cold, but Chandi and I sallied forth gaily. After much vain hunting in Bhawanipur, outside Calcutta, we arrived at the right house. The door held 2 iron rings, which I sounded piercingly. Notwithstanding the clamour, a servant approached with leisurely gait. His ironical smile implied that noisy visitors were powerless to disturb the calmness of a saint's home. Feeling the silent rebuke, my companion and I were thankful to be invited into the parlour. Our long wait there beset us with misgivings. India's unwritten law for the truth-seeker is patience. A master may purposely make a test of one's eagerness to meet him. This psychological ruse is freely employed in the West by doctors and dentists. Finally summoned by the servant, Chandi and I entered a sleeping apartment. The famous Sohong Swami was seated on his bed. The sight of his tremendous body affected us strangely. With bulging eyes, we stood speechless. We had never before seen such a huge chest or such football-like biceps. On an immense neck, the Swami's fierce yet calm face was adorned with flowing locks, beard and moustache. A hint of dove-like and tiger-like qualities shone in his dark eyes. He was unclothed, save for a tiger skin about his muscular waist. Finding our voices, my friend and I greeted the monk, expressing our admiration for his prowess in the extraordinary feline arena. "Will you not tell us, please, how it is possible to subdue with bare fists the most ferocious of jungle beasts, the Royal Bengals?" "My sons, it is nothing to me to fight tigers. I could do it today if necessary." He gave a childlike laugh. "You look upon tigers as tigers. I know them as pussycats." "Swamiji, I think I could impress my subconsciousness with the thought that tigers are pussycats. But could I make tigers believe it?" "Of course, strength also is necessary. One may not expect victory from a baby who imagines a tiger to be a house cat. Powerful hands are my sufficient weapon." He asked us to follow him to the patio, where he struck the edge of a wall. A brick crashed to the floor. The sky peered boldly through the gap, the lost tooth space in the wall. I staggered in astonishment. He who can remove a mortared brick from a solid wall with one blow, I thought, must surely be able to displace the teeth of tigers. A number of men have physical powers such as mine, but still lack in cool confidence. Those who are bodily but not mentally stalwart may find themselves fainting at the mere sight of a wild beast bounding freely in the jungle. The tiger in its natural ferocity and habitat is vastly different from the opium-fed circus animal. Many a man with Herculean strength has none the less been terrorized into abject helplessness before the onslaught of a Royal Bengal. Thus the tiger has converted the man in his own mind to a state as fearful as the pussycats. It is possible for a man owning a fairly strong body and an immensely strong determination to turn the tables on the tiger and force it to a conviction of pussycat defenselessness. How often I have done just that! I was quite willing to believe that the titan before me was able to perform the tiger-pussycat metamorphosis. He seemed to be in a didactic mood. Chandi and I listened respectfully. Mind is the wielder of muscles. The force of a hammer blow depends on the energy applied. The power expressed by a man's bodily instrument depends on his aggressive will and courage. The body is literally manufactured and sustained by mind. Through pressure of instincts from past lives, strengths or weaknesses percolate gradually into human consciousness. They express as habits, which in turn manifest as a desirable or an undesirable body. Outward frailty has a mental origin. In a vicious circle, the habit-bound body thwarts the mind. If the master allows himself to be commanded by a servant, the latter becomes autocratic. The mind is similarly enslaved by submitting to bodily dictation. At our entreaty, the impressive Swami consented to tell us something of his own life. "My earliest ambition was to fight tigers. My will was mighty, but my body was feeble." An ejaculation of surprise broke from me. It appeared incredible that this man, now with Atlantean shoulders fit to bear, could ever have known weakness. It was by indomitable persistency in thoughts of health and strength that I overcame my handicap. I have every reason to extol the compelling mental vigor that I found to be the real subduer of Royal Bengals. Do you think, revered Swami, that I could ever fight tigers? This was the first time and the last that the bizarre ambition ever visited my mind. Yes, he was smiling. But there are many kinds of tigers. Some roam in jungles of human desires. No spiritual benefit accrues by knocking beasts unconscious. Rather be victor over the inner prowlers. May we hear, sir, how you changed from a tamer of wild tigers to a tamer of wild passions? The Tiger Swami fell into silence. Remoteness came into his gaze, summoning visions of bygone years. I discerned his slight mental struggle to decide whether to grant my request. Finally, he smiled in acquiescence. When my fame reached its zenith, it brought the intoxication of pride. I decided not only to fight tigers but to display them in various tricks. My ambition was to force savage beasts to behave like domesticated ones. I began to perform my feats publicly with gratifying success. One evening my father entered my room in pensive mood. Son, I have words of warning. I would save you from coming ills produced by the grinding wheels of cause and effect. Are you a fatalist, father? Should superstition be allowed to discolor the powerful waters of my activities? I am no fatalist, son, but I believe in the just law of retribution as taught in the Holy Scriptures. There is resentment against you in the jungle family. Sometime it may act to your cost. Father, you astonish me. You well know what tigers are, beautiful but merciless. Who knows, my blows may inject some slight sanity of consideration into the thick heads. I am headmaster in a forest, finishing school to teach them gentle manners. Please, father, think of me as tiger tamer and never as tiger killer. How could my good actions bring ill upon me? I beg you not to impose any command that I change my way of life. Chandi and I were all attention, understanding the past dilemma. In India, a child does not lightly disobey his parents' wishes. The Tiger Swami went on. In stoic silence, father listened to my explanation. He followed it with a disclosure that he uttered gravely. Son, you compel me to relate an ominous prediction from the lips of a saint. He approached me yesterday as I sat on the veranda in my daily meditation. Dear friend, I come with a message for your belligerent son. Let him cease his savage activities. Otherwise, his next tiger encounter shall result in his severe wounds, followed by 6 months of deathly sickness. He shall then forsake his former ways and become a monk. This tale did not impress me. I considered that father had been the credulous victim of a deluded fanatic. The Tiger Swami made this confession with an impatient gesture, as though at some stupidity. Grimly silent for a long time, he seemed oblivious of our presence. When he took up the dangling thread of his narrative, it was suddenly with subdued voice. Not long after father's warning, I visited the capital city of Cooch Behar. The Pichak's territory was new to me and I expected a restful change. As usual, everywhere a curious crowd followed me on the streets. I would catch bits of whispered comment. This is the man who fights wild tigers. Has he legs or tree trunks? Look at his face. He must be an incarnation of the king of tigers himself. You know how village urchins function like final editions of a newspaper. With what speed do the even later speech bulletins of the women circulate from house to house. Within a few hours, the whole city was in a state of excitement over my presence. I was relaxing quietly in the evening when I heard the hoof-beats of galloping horses. They stopped in front of my dwelling place. In came a number of tall, turbaned policemen. I was taken aback. All things are possible unto these creatures of human law, I thought. I wonder if they are going to take me to task about matters utterly unknown to me. But the officers bowed with unwonted courtesy. Honored sir, we are sent to welcome you on behalf of the Prince of Cooch Behar. He is pleased to invite you to his palace tomorrow morning. I speculated a while on the prospect. For some obscure reason, I felt sharp regret at this interruption in my quiet trip. But the suppliant manner of the policeman moved me. I agreed to go.